for the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. We're having some issues inside the KCK Commission chamber regarding our video link, so you may not see us if you're online. We do have a few folks in the audience today as well. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started while our IT group tries to get that link going up. We will have a presentation, so that should dominate most of the time today. Without further ado, I'll pass it off to our procurement office to make an opening statement.
Good morning. I'm Teresa Houchins, the buyer for the Unified Government. I want to thank you all for joining us for our pre-bid meeting for the request for proposal 4th Street and Minnesota Avenue redevelopment site. As you know, we previously released the request for qualifications KCK Redevelopment to both lead developers and sub-consultants / contractors for the 3 separate parcel sites. All were requested to submit their qualifications and to select a site or sites they were interested in developing. The following 3 lead developers were selected from the RFQ process to move forward and will receive the request for proposal document for the 4th Street and Minnesota Avenue redevelopment site. Those developers are Copacan Brooks, Flaherty and Collins Properties, Millhouse Development. And I'll pass this back to Gunnar Hand.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchins. So we'll go ahead and get started with introductions just for the folks who will be presenting. Again, my name is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design for the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. You just met Ms. Hutchins. I'll let our consultant working on this project introduce themselves and begin the presentation now.
Sounds good, Gunnar. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Carney. I'm a principal with Development Strategies. We're a full-service planning and real estate advisory firm based out of St. Louis, and we have been working with the UG and the planning department to work through this RFP process for 3 UG-owned sites, and today we're here to talk about one of them, that being the 4th and Minnesota site in downtown. Just got a brief presentation, really, a little bit of it's to orient everybody. I assume that the folks that are in the room are aware of and interested in the RFQ and RFP process that we've done for the redevelopment of the 4th and Minnesota site. But I wanted to do a little bit of context setting, talk about kind of where we've been, how we got to this point, a little bit about some of the work that we've done, both on the market study side as well as the engagement side of things, and then arrive at today for the pre-bid meeting for the RFP and be able to maybe answer any questions you all might have prior to the formal release of the RFP. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. Just a little bit about the process, and I wanted to start all the way back with the RFQ process. Ms. Hutchins said, talked about the formal RFQ, the response to that, the selection of developers to move forward. And so yes, that is, kind of one of the formalities from that RFQ process. But to give it a little bit more context, we suggested that the UG do an RFQ process and kind of interject that, even though it lengthened the process a little bit, really with 3 goals in mind. One is, by doing an RFQ process, it allowed the UG to basically announce to to any interested developers, to the community at large, that these are going to be opportunities. That 4th and Minnesota, as well as Indian Springs Mall, and we were talking about 18th and Quindaro, would be, potential redevelopment opportunities, and it was a way to just get that message out there. Also, by doing that, it allows them to gauge interest in redevelopment and understanding, who's going to be interested in what projects. The projects are very different. The sites are very different. The potential for projects is very different. The expertise and the capabilities of developers and a development team would be very different given the different sites. And that would allow the UG to understand and, who is interested, and, making sure that they have quality developers for the various sites to move forward with. And then the third goal really of the RFQ process, and perhaps the most important really, was it's an opportunity not only to announce that this is there, but also to recognize that there may be community partners that don't have the history, the financial capacity, the overall team capacity to carry out development and to lead a development on this site, but they may be interested in participating in some way in the future redevelopment of any of these properties. And so by doing an RFQ solicitation for what we called subcontractors, was also a way to identify those smaller firms that might have a specialty that could work on a larger team to really help in the successful development of these sites. For us to identify them, pull them together, and to understand who's interested, understand and let the prime developers know, hey, we have a pool of local talent, of regional talent, that have different expertise that you might be able to leverage within your larger development team. Folks, companies, contractors, subcontractors that that the primes may not know about, but which by doing this process this way, we've created that pool. And then, as we'll talk about at the end, try to incentivize their participation in this project through criteria for the RFP. So, those were sort of the goals and the reasons why we did the RFQ. As was mentioned at the introduction, we had three pre-qualified developers for the 4th and Minnesota site. We did not cut the sub-consultant list down. Again, though, what we were doing is identifying and creating that pool of pre-qualified sub-consultants and subcontractors, and then, making that known and available to the primes as they put their teams together. Another piece of this, once the RFQ was released and developers were responding to that, we were also conducting a countywide market study that was also designed to provide kind of the market context for each of the UG-owned sites. And so what a market study is it's very much, it is what has happened in the recent development history, and in recent market conditions. It's demographic and economic realities of the county, of the city, of the region, and then bringing that together into a cohesive document that is currently online on our RFP development webpage. And so, in addition to the demographic and economic, conditions that exist and that would impact the development of each of the sites, we also looked at what is the current site conditions, what are surrounding the sites, what are the uses and the character that surround each of the sites that are going to also impact the potential for redevelopment, the development feasibility, and just so cohesion of the site. And so, as you can see here, 4th and Minnesota, we're right downtown. You all know where this is. It's a giant parking lot that's wrapped around this smaller building that's called the United Way on the map here. That's not currently in an operation, but it's also, adjacent to the children's campus. There's a health building across the parking lot. There's the health system property to the south. You've got the Merck Co-op just within an easy walking distance. I'll talk about that in just a minute. The downtown hotel, the UG, is not far away. So this is a downtown urban character. It's got connections to, it's got great roadway connections. It is a gateway into the site. It has views of downtown. It has trails. It's got urban character. And so we're really looking at this as an opportunity to take advantage of that urban character, create density, create a mix of uses that complement the properties that you see surrounding the site. When we think about marketability, you know, yes, it is driven by kind of what's been going on in the market. Multifamily, hotel, maybe some storefront retail, maybe some anchor retail entertainment. That's what came out of the market study. And I'll talk about, you know, those are the market potential. There's some real opportunity here to take this specific site in a variety of ways. But the one thing to remember is that this site alone can't be everything that the downtown needs. And so the market study gives us some perspective on what's market feasible, talking about living, urban living, amenities, gathering spaces, the site for the farmers market, green space, public art, those kinds of amenities, thinking about connectivity on the site, trails, roadway. There's, you know, it's downtown, so we still need to be able to, have parking and accommodate cars, but we also need to understand there's very much an urban pedestrian context here, and there's trails and sidewalk connectivity that need to happen with, with areas around the site and adjacent to the site. And then there's an opportunity for commerce. Again, the opportunity at this end of State Street and Minnesota Avenue may be different than what's, 5 blocks down or 10 or 15 blocks down. And so, we're saying that there is an opportunity for commerce and retail in the market. Is that appropriate for this site? Maybe as it relates to supporting some other uses on the site. So that is what we looked at from kind of the market study, marketability components of the site. To complement that, what we like to do is have, and we really kind of support the idea of having a community conversation that sort of blends two questions. What do you want the site to be? What does the community want the site to be with what can it be, right? And where you start to see an intersection of what do you want it to be with what it can be, that's where you start to see those real opportunities and those strategic opportunities for redevelopment. In this context, the market study is the what can it be. The engagement piece was to inform the what do you want it to be part of that conversation. So we had 3 engagement opportunities. We had an open house at the Merck Co-op on October 27th. And we were, Kat and I were in town for the 27th and 28th. We participated in that open house specific to this site, and then also participated in the neighborhood summit and provided some displays there to continue the conversation with folks from the broader community that were there at the summit. And then we also provided an online survey that walked any online participants through the same sort of boards and information and presentation that we gave at the open house. And so it was a really robust conversation. I'll be really honest with you. I think we had planned to do some activities and kind of walk people through specific things. And what we found with a room of 30 to 40 people is they just wanted to talk about the potential for this site, what's going on downtown, the potential for downtown, and where we could see, leveraging this specific site for a broader downtown vision. And so we just had a great conversation, talked about, and so again, sort of supplemented by the online survey. What you see here on the slide is some of the community preferences for redevelopment of the site. I will say, a lot of this does intersect and blend well with the marketability and the market study. Many and most in the room understood that the site you still need to have marketable uses. It needs to be feasible development in order for a developer to step in and take advantage of this site. And so, there was a little bit of reality setting, of context setting, I should say, and sort of the market parameters. And many people leaned into that. On the marketability side and on the market study side, as you saw, housing was definitely a use that is needed downtown. Within the context of that conversation, though, with the community, it was what else could it be from a housing perspective. Yes, market rate. You need to have market rate housing to support the development feasibility, but what else could you build in from an affordable housing standpoint? Is this an opportunity to weave in permanent supportive housing, which is a certain type of affordable housing? Is there an opportunity to focus on senior housing? People were saying that they didn't necessarily, want one over the other. They want something that is more than just market rate.
120 pro and college sports teams. We're America's.
Okay. I think we had somebody bombing our meeting here. Thinking about commerce, there was a conversation, and there's, of commerce can look different, as I said, along different parts of the corridor, along different parts of downtown. And so, they were saying, this is not the area to make a large commercial, retail entertainment district. There are uses like the Children's Center and the health campus and other adjacent uses that really may be more housing and community supported. And so if there is retail, it's first floor retail, it's supporting retail for the rest of downtown, but also focused on storefront retail that would be supported by the housing, that might be developed. Things like, this is a gateway. People are going to see this building when they drive into downtown KCK. So let's make it remarkable. Let's make it so that people notice it and have positive feelings about what they see and what that makes them feel as they drive into downtown. Making sure that it's connected to the trails and other accessibility, opportunities around the site. Maybe there's a YMCA, maybe there's childcare, maybe there's co-working space, but you can see a real desire to have, a community benefits and kind of cohesion and connectivity to the surrounding part of, to this specific surrounding part of downtown that may look different than other areas. So again, this was the community's opportunity to tell us what do you want it to be. The market study kind of tells us what can it be, and the intersection of those, as I said, are where the creativity and the excitement and the opportunity for redevelopment of this site can come into play. And so what that means for us, I think, as we move forward into the RFP phase of the process is, how do we explore that intersection, and how do we encourage developers, the three selected developers, to be thinking about what do they want it to be with what it can be, and finding that creative and exciting intersection. And so you do that in some ways by providing criteria in the selection process, in the RFP, that will give developers a sense of direction of where they want to go. The interesting thing about for those of you that aren't familiar with how an RFP process works, there's a lot of boilerplate requirements, legal and financial requirements, and paperwork. But then there's also what is the plan? What does the project look like? What is the design? And what are the different elements that the different developers are bringing in? This will be guided by the market. This will be guided by community engagement. It'll be guided by the expertise of whatever the developers are bringing and their development team are bringing to the table. And then what we do is we have criteria in the RFP that have points assigned to them. And as the review team are reviewing the three proposals, they're assigning point totals on how well they think that the proposals are meeting the various criteria. There is a significant number of criteria in this case, and I'm not going to go through each one of them individually, but I wanted to talk about them sort of in whole and kind of characterize it. There's the proposed project category, a variety of criteria within that, and points to be had on creating that gateway into downtown. This is an urban site, so we want density, we want creative density, we want connectivity and cohesion. The fact that the Merck is within walking distance of this site is such an asset to the potential redevelopment here. So many downtown developments, there's always a chicken and egg. Do you get residents in or do you get a grocery store in? Can you support the grocery store without the residents? The grocery store is here, so that amenity already exists. How do you tap into that? Multimodal access, it's car, it's transit, it's bicycle and pedestrian and other modes of transportation. Again, I think there's a real emphasis on compatible uses. That's also conforming to zoning on one hand, but also thinking about those compatible uses. Not every use that's in the zone, allowed under the zoning category may be appropriate given what the community has said they would like to see. And then, of course, there's, needing to provide a fiscal and economic benefit, not only to the developer, but to the UG. On the team background and capabilities, we're really looking at what is the opportunity, what are the skills, what are the expertise, what's the track record that the development team is bringing into this process. As I said, urban character, downtown corridor, that will, kind of lead to specific developers really being able to lean into those dense, mixed use, multimodal kinds of projects and being creative within that setting, making sure that we see that represented in the team that the prime consultants are pulling together. It's their ability to get the project, lined up and off the ground. Are they local? Or are they not local? It won't be an ultimate deciding factor, but it is a criteria. History with engaging with the community around their developments, their past developments, and how that works. Experience in using incentives, and again, this is where at the bottom of that list, the team includes one or more pre-qualified sub-consultants. Again, it's not a deal breaker, make or break, but there are additional points to be had if one or more of those pre-qualified consultants and contractors are on their team. From the community benefits standpoint, again, we're looking at, it's not possible for every community benefit outlined in the RFP as far as the criteria goes to be satisfied. And so rather than saying, hey, give us everything on that list, maybe you can, maybe a developer is going to say, we can give you everything on that community benefits list and maximize that. And that would be fantastic. But the idea is, again, these community benefit criteria are the elements that we heard from the community. The developers are going to tell us through their proposals which ones of these community benefits, or which one, two, or more of these community benefits are going to be integrated into their project in order to get those points. And then finally, the last category is really policy goals. These are goals that the UG has expressed, especially for this site, to say, yes, we expect there to be housing of some component, but we need some amount of affordable housing. I don't know if it's senior specific, family specific. I don't know the levels of affordability. There's a broad spectrum of affordability that could be considered, but we need something. And then the selection team will look at how that's included in each one of the three proposals, and will determine kind of the points and how well the projects meet that policy goal. Another policy goal is if there are retail spaces, if it makes sense to have ground floor activated retail space within this development and to support the surrounding district, has the developer carved out or created a mechanism that allows some of that retail space to be for local businesses and not just chains. Chains have a greater potential to be able to afford higher lease rates for their retail spaces that may outcompete local businesses or local service providers that might want to have space, or it might make sense to have space for them in this development. And so how has that opportunity been created and preserved within that development? And then connectivity, again, is a big deal given its location and its proximity to other areas that need to be connected, through bicycle and pedestrian facilities, but also the location of the trail, the street network, and transit all need to be reflected here. And so, as I said, there's numerous criteria here. It's in the RFP, section 6 of the RFP. And if there are any specific questions, we can maybe dive into those, but that's in a nutshell what we're looking at as far as how we crafted the criteria. And then here, the RFP schedule is on the screen. It'll be on the website if it's not already, and certainly, obviously, in the RFP. We are here December 13th. We're at the pre-RFP meeting. Our goal right now is to release have a formal release of the RFP on December 20th. We'll have an opportunity to solicit questions and any clarifications that are needed. That will be in January 12th by 11 a.m. Once we have those questions in, we will release the response collectively to everyone and on the website, so you will know what the questions and the answers were. We are looking for the RFP submissions due on February 20th. So you can see from a December 20th release date, there's 2 months there for putting together the best quality creative proposal that you can. We'll have those evaluations end of February through the 1st of March, and then interviews if necessary of the shortlisted development teams, and then hopefully a development team announced in April. That's the current schedule as we have it now. And let's see, I believe that is it for the presentation that I have. I can just leave this RFP schedule up right now, and or I can stop sharing. Either way, just let me know what you'd like, Gunnar, and I think I'll toss it back to you to open up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carney, and thank you, Ms. Hutchins, for that overview and recap of the process thus far. We are going to move into the question and answer portion of the pre-bid conference this morning. For those of you online, we did get the video working kind of mid-presentation there. So good morning, everyone. I think what I'd like to do is, if the folks in the chamber have any questions, we'll start with you. If you could just come up to the mic. And then for the folks online, if you have any questions, if you could start populating the Q&A, we'll take those, I think, after we see if anybody in the chamber has any questions. Anybody in the chamber want to come up and ask any questions? Okay, seeing no questions in the chamber, we'll go to online to see if anybody has anything they need to know. And again, Ms. Marcy, UG staff has been dropping some things in the chat. I would encourage everybody to go to the website, wykckk.org/redevelopment. That's wykckk.org/redevelopment, where you can find all the latest updates. You can find the countywide market analysis that Mr. Carney noted. Later this afternoon, we'll be posting this presentation up on that website for anybody's for everyone's information. And then that is the best location to find any future updates. As Mr. Carney mentioned, we are anticipating and have always been planning to release this RFP before the end of this calendar year. If there are any potential changes to that schedule, you will also find those online at wykckk.org/redevelopment. I'm going to pause for 1 minute to see if anybody's typing away online to ask any questions. And in the interim, for everyone who's in the chamber, if you did not sign in, we do have the sign-in sheet over here, and we can add you to our contact list for this project. Everyone online who registered, that registration will function as your sign-in, so no worries there.
Gunnar, we do have one question online. Does the UG have official affordable housing goals?
I'll start with that, and then if we also have with us Mr. Dwayne Bright, who's our Fuse Housing Fellow. So I think that officially the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas just adopted our Plan KCK, which is the comprehensive plan update for Kansas City, Kansas. That is a vision document that points us in the direction of trying to produce more attainable housing for the community. It sets the stage for multiple conversations for our Board of Commissioners to have regarding setting certain criteria, goals, requirements, what have you, whatever comes of that conversation. But currently, no, there is no affordable housing policy in the unified government. And if Mr. Bright wants to add anything, please do.
Good morning, Dwayne Bright, Fuse Executive Fellow. Yes, according to the Mark's Regional Housing, Regional Housing Data Hub, Wyandotte County is approximately 4,153 units short when it comes to individuals that can afford $650 or less a month for rent. And so there is a significant shortage in the number of units that are available. And so any boost in trying to reduce that at least by 50% over the course of 5 years is a lofty goal. But it is something that we believe that developments such as this or those coming in the future can possibly help us with that goal of providing affordable housing here in Wyandotte County.
And then Mr. Carney, I don't know if you have any additional context based on your work on the market analysis on that one, but again, in terms of a goal, no, but we have been looking into that over the last couple of years in the UG. We again hope to have some conversations at the Board of Commissioners level to identify policies, whether that be some sort of straight up goal for all housing developments, or if it is potentially tied to development incentives, are the conversations that occurred during Plan KCK process.
Yeah, I think what I would add is that obviously different affordability levels are going to impact the development feasibility of the site, and we know that. But we also know, again, we're asking for we're asking for a lot. This is a great opportunity to really move the needle on creating a gateway and meeting some of these policy goals, and affordable housing is that. And I think one of the things that we would be seeing is from the developers and the development team and the proposals is making a case for the levels of affordability that are being included, and actually being prepared to talk about why certain levels were or weren't included, and maybe making a case of we're providing this within our proposal, but you could provide something different if there were X, Y, and Z, and being able to show some forethought on ways that we might be able to flex that and meet even more of the affordability goals if the proposal is selected. And so I guess wanting to say yes to Dwayne's point, we need everything, the full spectrum of affordability. And I think it'll be interesting to see the developers kind of responding with what they are proposing within their project, and just being prepared for a good conversation.
I did get a question about a copy of the ordinance. I'm assuming that you meant a copy of Plan KCK, so that link is in the chat and you can read that document there. The next question that we have is, can you repeat the names of the 3 selected developers?
I can. The 3 selected developers for this project is Copacan Brooks, Flaherty and Collins Properties, and Millhouse Development.
And Gunnar, Director of Planning and Design, we can more clearly put that on our project website as well. It is up there currently, I believe, but we can make that more prominent for everybody in the future. All right, we'll give everybody another 1-minute try. Nobody in the chamber? All right. Well, I think without any further questions, unless one just popped up.
Yep, we did get one more question.
Okay.
So will there be programs established to maintain the perks that we would like to come with a new development? Is this up to the developers? Or will it UG maintain these? Is there talk about social programming at all?
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. The current thinking is that while this is UG owned land, it will be transferred over to the developer who is selected moving forward. What we have is the opportunity for some sort of, let's just call it memorandum of understanding and or potentially in the development agreement process to further lock in, I should say, some of the discussions that have been happening with the community as it relates to the ongoing operations, programming, and maintenance of the site. So I think that whatever selected developer is chosen will have their own incentives to maintain their property. But we have had conversations about the type of programming, be it the inclusion of a community farmers market. We mentioned the focus on local businesses, but also if there are some semi-public or privately owned public spaces on this site, when we talk about open space, we would expect those to be maintained by the private developer. And I'm not sure if Mr. Carney or anyone else on the team would want to add on to that one.
Yeah, I would, Gunnar. I think you said it right. I think when we're talking about any of the community benefits, any of the policy goals, housing affordability, I think sometimes that there's a concern about sort of I'll call it maybe a bait and switch. And the community's thinking, okay, well, the proposal said that they're going to provide this level of affordability or this number of units. But then when it gets all said and done, it doesn't come to fruition. And I think while there is certainly an expected kind of refinement of the proposal as it goes through the development process, that ultimately there is a development agreement between the UG and the developer that will really codify the role that the different entities are going to play in meeting those goals, and that will be part of that development agreement. And that's where that assurity comes in. And by having the process, I think the way we've had it with the community conversations and the very kind of public facing RFP process, people will see that process going forward. And I think can rest assured that that's kind of the ultimate goal, is to have a redevelopment plan that meets all of the variety of competing and complementary interests here.
Hey, Gunnar, Eric Murray, Oak Impact Group. Quick follow-up question on that, though. In the community benefits section,
We'd ask everybody to put their questions in the chat, please.
We have a question in the chat. Will the UG accept a full LIHTC application?
Alyssa, could you say that again?
The question is, will the UG accept a full LIHTC application?
Oh, of the entire site being a LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit project? Interesting question.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. I don't think we would disqualify a LIHTC project necessarily. I don't think that has necessarily been fully thought through or discussed through the process to date. I know that LIHTC are competitive statewide, and they often, or they do require some level of support from the local municipality in which they are applied for. So I think that we would handle that through the development process. And again, I don't know if Mr. Bright or Mr. Carney have anything to add to that one.
I've got another thought, Dwayne, but I'd defer first if you've got any thoughts.
He does not. Go ahead, Mr. Carney.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, what came to my mind is we do not have criteria that says, more points for more affordable housing or more points for a light tech versus anything else. We have, we have the criteria the way we have it. And I think my feeling when I heard the question and it was clarified is that we're looking for the redevelopment of this site that meets as many of the goals as possible, and putting together the most compelling project as possible. And if a team is able to do that through a fully light tech property versus some mix of something else, like Gunnar said, I don't think it's precluded by the way the RFP is written. I think it just needs to be competitive.
And I know a participant was going to ask a question. I'm not sure if that came in yet, Mr. Martin. Could you please ask that for us? Thank you.
Yep, we have two questions. One is, did the referenced market study include an analysis of rents?
I'll defer to Mr. Carney on that one.
No, not to that level of detail. And I would just, the market study is on the website, and you can dive into all of the details. It's fully there.
We do have one more question, but maybe it needs a little bit more clarification. Currently it says, is there a way to include a checks and balance so these are sure to be started and continued? Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, Alyssa, if I may, I'll just interpret it, and maybe I hit the mark, maybe I don't, but a lot of times checks and balances and what people mean when they say that from a development and a redevelopment standpoint is the potential, the being able to lay out specific schedules and milestones and development phasing, so that we're not sitting here 10 years from now having the same conversation, that the developer is going to be acting, in good faith and meeting a schedule, and that sort of a mutually agreed upon schedule through that development agreement. And then sometimes that there are, the context of, within the context of that, clauses and provisions for clawback to say, hey, if the developer is not meeting these in a good faith kind of effort, that there's a way to claw that, this agreement back, or put new stipulations on in order to get what it is that the UG and the community are wanting out of this. That's how I interpret what that means from a checks and balances sort of standpoint. And I think if I'm wrong, yeah, definitely need some clarity there.
It's Dwayne Bright, Fuse Executive Fellow. I would like to add to that. That would probably be the difficulty in having a full LIHTC proposal, the ability to be able to follow through with that, because as Gunnar Hand mentioned, that it is a very competitive process. And so were that to win in next year's cycle, it not be approved through that would cause some difficulty. And as you mentioned, Justin, it would probably have to be clawed back and go with another developer. So that would be a difficulty with having a full LIHTC, because it's not guaranteed. It is a very competitive process.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design, and again, somewhat of a shot in the dark is for that answer to that question, unless the asker wants to clarify and reduce some ambiguity in it. I would just simply also add on that the expectation for the selected development team would be that they would have to go through both the land entitlement process, which is a public process, as well as if they wanted incentives, which we are anticipating, the development agreement process, which is also a public process. So there are intrinsically some checks and balances built into that.
We do have another question regarding the rent analysis. Does the UG intend to engage a feasibility consultant to analyze rents? This is the core issue and will impact percentage of affordability, incentives, target tenants, mix, level amenities, et cetera.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. I believe we've engaged a consultant in development strategies who will help us with things of that nature moving forward through this process.
We did get a little bit more clarification on the previous question. It says maybe not necessarily following a schedule, but measuring the quality of life before and after, making sure that those goals are being met. Small businesses are thriving, walkability is increased, those things.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Again, I would say through the development process, we have the opportunity to review the site plan, building elevations from an urban design perspective. Those things that impact our quality of life can be reviewed, discussed, and determined through the development agreement process. The more economic, programmatic, if you will, pieces that could impact quality of life based on the development could also be reviewed, discussed, and determined. Again, that development agreement will have clawbacks accordingly. All right, third time's a charm. I'll give everybody one more minute if they have any additional questions. Mr. Murray wants to include his question that he wanted to ask in the chat. We could do it that way as well, or excuse me, in the Q&A. Looking at the chamber one more time. Anything got shuffled around in your heads? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's patience in that long pause. Just trying to see if anything else came in. I think that will do it for our pre-bid conference. Again, I would encourage everybody to go to the website, wykokck.org/redevelopment for any future updates. We will have an update on that website. You can also find the RFP when it is dropped on the street on the purchasing website for the unified government. It'll be essentially the redevelopment website will redirect purchasing. So you can find it in both locations if you're tracking. I really appreciate everybody's time this morning. As we've said from the beginning of this process, for all sites reviewed and determined in the RFQ process, we do believe at the unified government, this is an opportunity for us to transform and redefine how we do community development, both the process of and the results therein with our stakeholders and constituents. One last thing before I go, the Downtown Shareholders, which is the neighborhood business revitalization organization of which this site is included, as well as other adjacent neighborhood groups, have been engaged in this process through outreach with that NBR. Downtown Shareholders, they submitted a letter based on all of the outreach they had conducted that is also on our website that will also be included as an appendices to this RFP. Again, we fully expect to drop it before the end of this calendar year. If anything changes, we'll let you all know. Thank you very much and have a great day. Happy holidays, everybody.